Hey, everybody. It's Friday, at least to us. I don't know if that's you guys. It's Friday to us. Welcome to another episode of Money and Stuff. If you're listening for the first time, I'm your host, Rodriguez. Co-host with me, as always, Conor Shepard. Here to talk to you about money and stuff. Conor, I know you have something you want to talk about. I guess you read an article, right?
I know.
Likes to show off.
Put that in the headlines. Conor read an article, right?
Conor reads. Put that in your bio. Conor reads how to read. All right.
It's on my resume.
Skill set: reading, coloring. I can add special skills.
Baking cookies.
All right. Enough of that. No one cares. We'll talk about what you want to talk about and things you want to hear. What was the article?
Yeah, the article's titled "Why More Americans Think They'll Never Retire," and we've talked in the past, like in some episodes, just about that problem where there's more people, it seems, that don't think they'll be able to retire. But this article did a really good job of breaking down data that they had pulled together with polls. But what they found with an Axios poll from July, 29% of workers under the age of 55 said that they don't think they'll ever retire. So under 55, just under 30% of people saying they don't think they'll ever retire. Then there was a report from the Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies that said that 40% of Gen X workers and 50% of baby boomers expect to retire after the age of 70, if at all.
I guess first question is, did it talk about why people felt that way?
Yeah, it had a few factors that it mentioned.
Is it different for each of those age groups, or is it all pretty much the same reason?
It's all pretty much the same, and their explanation on why is pretty broad, and we've talked about it before, but things like inflation, just people... I mean, the article really treated inflation as the primary factor, along with just people's underestimating what they will need at retirement is another one. But I thought it was interesting how on that 29% under 55 think they'll never retire, and it asked why not, 75% of them said that they can't afford to stop working. So inflation, as well as, and I mean, that is part of inflation as well, but just the earning power of people's jobs just isn't quite what they need it to be, is what I'm guessing.
So I could understand why people feel that way, right? Like even new clients to the firm that come to us that you would look at and say that they had done a fantastic job saving still feel insecure about their retirement, right? So I have absolutely no doubt that, after what we've went through with the record inflation, and with a generation approaching, a really big generation approaching retirement age, I have no doubt that people would be feeling insecure about whether or not they can retire, right? But, I also think, I'm not going to do anything like do a blame game and, you didn't save enough or anything like that. I think what it's more about is that people haven't addressed all of the unknowns in their financial life, right? So what they do know is I make this amount of money now and I only have this much saved. And they do a quick division calculation and say, if I keep, or, in order to keep my current income, I only have so many years, right? And I'm going to run out of money very quickly. And when you look at that, it can be a very, very scary thing. But, that's one of the reasons why guys like you and I exist and why we created this firm is I find that the things that scare us the most are those unknown things. So people need to look at, you got to make these things known. Good or bad. You need to know what the real situation is. You need to sit down, either do it yourself or sit down with a professional and figure out, where do I really stand, right? And I'll say this, I think everybody could retire one day. You just have to decide what that retirement looks like and if you're okay with it, right? I think I've told you a story about my son meeting a guy who was fishing with a harpoon on the beach. Did I ever tell you about this?
No.
Oh my gosh. So my son, we were on vacation or whatever, and my son had gone out surfing, and he met this. My son was 12 at the time. We'll say this, but he had met this guy that was fishing out there with a harpoon, right? And he comes back and he's like, "Hey, I need a harpoon." Like, yeah, this is how we're finding out. He talked to this guy, and like, what do you need a harpoon for? Well, I was surfing. There's this guy out there harpoon fishing, if that's what you call it. I don't know what you call it, right? And I got to talking to him, and essentially, long story short is this guy's homeless. He kind of couch surfs, right? But he goes out every day and catches his food for the day, right? And my son was like, "That sounds awesome.
That's
This guy
the life.
doesn't work. He surfs when he wants to. He catches his food. Fantastic, right?" I mean, so that guy's essentially retired. I mean, he has a job, but his job is to go out and catch food every day, right? Yeah. I'm saying that. I'm really not. I'm trying. I don't want to diminish what people feel like as they see retirement approaching. What I do want to give some stats though, because I think the common answer to solve retirement is always, I'm just going to work longer, or I'm going to work the rest of my life, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is, people think they're going to be able to do that, but people age 65 and older still in the workforce, only 20% of those people are actually able to continue to be in the workforce, right? It's usually factors beyond your control that dictate whether or not you can continue working, right? So health is a big one, right? Like having some sort of health issue that doesn't really allow you to work the way you used to. And not just your own health, but a lot of times it's family's health. And the fact that you've got to help someone else or help take care of them, that happens quite a bit. If you're in your 50s or 60s, you're probably in your peak earning years. And if you go through a layoff, it is very, very difficult to find a job back at that same income or at all. I hate to admit it, but the fact is as a country, businesses are ageist because they look at you and they say, "I don't know how long you'll be here." Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much I'll have to pay you versus someone 20 years younger than you. So it becomes difficult to replace your income, even at a lower income, if you get let go or go through a round of layoffs. So there are a lot of factors outside of your control if your plan is, I'll just keep working.
Well, and I would also say, I think that mindset is almost, not to say it is, but I would imagine that it could be counterproductive, because if you are thinking, I'm just going to keep working or I'll work longer than 65, I can see the psychology of it. You can self-rationalize, oh, well, I'm not saving right now, but I'm going to be working longer, so I'll make that up. And it's, like you said, it's basically making a plan for a perfect straight line of circumstances without any consideration of unknowns, or with minimal consideration for unknowns.
Yeah, and I feel like sitting down and dealing with your finances when you know that there's a problem on the horizon like this is a lot like going to the doctor when you know there's some things you need to get checked out. You're gonna avoid it as long as possible, right? But things people really need to do, if you feel like this, if you feel like you're in this position that you're never going to be able to retire, there are things you can do, right? One is, I'd say, meet with a professional. But if you meet with a professional, I'm going to give you a list of things that you've got to make sure that this professional is helping you do, because ultimately it's going to come down to what you do and how you manage through it, right? So first is, you do have to, take a real assessment of what your current financial situation looks like, right? You really need to take a comprehensive look, understanding your current finances, which is your income, your expenses, anything you have saved, anything you're consistently saving, what debt you have, what debt you're accumulating, what debt has just been sitting out there, understanding where you are, right? What your point A is, is essential to figuring out if retirement is going to be a possibility.
Yeah.
And some of that is looking at, it is looking at your expenses and really determining what's important in those expenses. How many of those expenses are discretionary? And even if they're non-discretionary expenses, housing, food, those types of things, are there ways that we can begin to reduce those expenses, right? So that way you can begin saving and your expenses in retirement will not be as high. Right? And then you take a look at that, and then you need to begin to create a budget, right? Develop a detailed budget that really outlines your monthly income and expenses. And this may be what helps you to identify those areas that you could cut back and maybe take that money and start saving. I will say debt is a huge part of it. I think what most people find is when they stop working, life is not that expensive if you don't have debt, right? We have a lot of clients that could spend a lot more money, but because everything is paid off, they really don't spend much more than their Social Security check, right? I know for a lot of people, their Social Security check is not going to be that big, but maybe if you can figure out what your day-to-day living expenses are going to be and what you need to have coming in, instead of feeling like you're going to work the rest of your life, maybe we can figure out how, if you keep working, maybe we can find something where you don't have to work as hard and you can be part-time, right? Or the other thing too is when you go through the financial planning process and really do look at what it takes for you to live and do some things that you enjoy doing, a plan can start being developed that says, if you do these things, here's when retirement is possible, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people just think, if it's like never, right? Or it feels hopeless, then every day they go to work, they hate it, right? And it is really like you're always going to have to go to work because you don't have a target.
Yeah.
Right. And even if you have a target, even if you say, well, my target's 70, well, what's really telling you that you can even do it then? Right? You really need someone to help you, or if you're able to figure this out on your own, like figure out when will what I either have coming in from outside sources like Social Security and my savings that I have be able to replicate what my expenses are, right?
Yeah.
At what point, right? Like you need to define that because maybe you do need to work longer than you wish to, but you still need to know what that date is, right? And if you can create that budget, if you can figure out how to find some room to save, then you start looking for places of opportunity of where to put that money. And, if you have a job right now that offers a 401k, the fastest way to start increasing what you have saved is to take advantage of whatever employer match they give you. So some employers will put in 3% of your salary if you're contributing that much. Some will put in as much as 6%. Imagine putting in 6% of your salary or income into this 401k and it instantly doubling because your employer also put 6% in. Mm-hmm. Right? That's a place where you are putting your money in a position of growth, but you also have the added effect of someone else contributing to your retirement for you. Right? The other thing that I would look at is I would go to ssa.gov and I would look at what my Social Security estimate is, right? A really important thing to look at is your work history and see how many years of reportable income that you have. Because the way Social Security works is it looks at your highest 35 years of pay. And if you don't have a full 35 years, there's going to be a lot of zeros in there. And they have this like average that they figure out for how much money you've made of your highest 35 years. And if you have 25, then you have 10 zeros in that average. So what you can then do is start looking at how do I fill those zeros, right? So part of your decision of when you retire may be when will I have 35 full years so I have no zeros in my average, so that way we can get my Social Security benefit as high as possible. So take a look at that. And then, like I said, with looking at the budget, looking at what you would be able to save, looking at what retirement would be at different ages, then you can start to get an idea of, oh, okay, at this age, I'd be able to produce an income that would allow me not to have to work, right? And I think that that's a much different feeling than, maybe if you felt like I'm going to work and it's my choice, like I could stop right now and I would be okay. I think that feels different, right? When you know that if I could stop right now, everything would be fine. So but I think more and more, I'm also running into people that they still want to be useful and helpful, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think people's idea of retirement is like sitting on the front porch in a rocking chair anymore. I think life is much more fast paced now, and to think that you're going to go from like 100 miles an hour to suddenly like this, I just sit around lifestyle. Like, I mean, the statistics show that making that transition leads to depression, right? So you've got to have something, if you are able to retire and not work, you've got to have something that gives you some purpose, right? But
Yeah.
but we could also look at, okay, if you're making this income right now, if let's say we cut that income in half because you started working part-time,
Mm-hmm.
then when could we be at the point where you'd have enough to supplement that other half, right? So that way, instead of working full-time, you could work part-time. The likelihood of you being able to work part-time into later years is greater than you being able to work full-time.
Yeah.
And then we see, well, how long do you have to work part-time before this money will be enough that you could completely stop working? But everything starts with not being afraid to find out what the situation really is.
Yeah. Well said.
Because worst case scenario is it is what you think, right? Like you're already fearful that you're going to have to work for the remainder of your life. So the worst case scenario is you find out that it's true, right? So you're already prepared for the worst news, right? Like there's no, like it's not going to be like, hey, it's worse than we thought. You're going to have to work 10 years past your death somehow. Like that can't happen. Right?
That's a good point.
So,
And I can't believe I hadn't thought of that. That's really funny, though. Just imagining, like, look, I'm sorry, Lisa, you're going to be working until you're 165.
Yeah. Right? Like, we can't do that. Right? So,
worst case scenario is as bad as you think. Like,
yeah. So, it can only go up from there. If you're already thinking you're going to work for the rest of your life, it can only go up from there. And we can put definable dates. And you can get a plan of action that says, if you do these things, and if you're thinking to yourself right now, I don't know how I would save any money, get some help, right? Like have someone take a second look and ask you some questions to look at things, because when we're in the fog of it, it's hard to see what our options are, right? And again, worst case scenario is you look at it and go, someone else looks at it and says, yeah, you're right. You don't have any other options. You can't save any money. There's nowhere to cut back. We've even had clients where we've said, right, like your skill set and your qualifications, you could be making $20,000 more.
Yep.
And have encouraged people to go get a different job, really doing the same thing they're doing now and make more money, and they're able to save more. And suddenly the situation changes tremendously.
Exactly.
But you need someone to come up alongside you and help you through this. And there's no shame in it. I mean, I know it's hard. I know, when people come in to talk to us, I know you feel a little bit vulnerable because your finances are really a very intimate thing, right?
Yeah.
Because you keep them to yourself. You don't show them to the world. And then you've got to let us in, right? But I promise you, there's no judgment. I wish I could say that about the entire financial industry, but I can promise you there's no judgment from us. There's no judgment about decisions you've made with your money in the past, because there's nothing we can do about it, right?
Yeah.
But we can take a look at where things are right now and help you start making really smart decisions on what you need to do moving forward, right? And even if it's not like dramatically make your life different, if we can make it better in any way, why not do that?
Yeah.
Right? And why not get yourself to a point where if I take these steps, my retirement may not be ideal, but at least I know it's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head earlier. I mean, we talk about it in so many of our episodes, but I really can't understate how difficult it can be for people when they're in a situation with, like you said, they're in that fog, that they're in the maelstrom of financial woes. The pressure, the emotional stress, I mean, everything, making decisions is going to be very difficult in a level-headed environment. And you're trying to make decisions from an environment of all that stress, all those factors. Having even the smartest person on the planet benefits from a second pair of eyes looking at the same thing he's looked at. We miss stuff. There are things that we don't think of, and going to an expert in an area like this, simply just sitting down and talking with them can do
Yeah.
unbelievable amounts.
And it always needs to be someone who can be honest with you, right? So you need to figure out, like if you go to talk to someone, ask them what their process is and how they determine these things, not what products they sell, right? If in the first meeting they give you a solution, it's a red flag because they probably have that solution no matter what problem.
They were ready for that to be your solution before you came in.
Right. A thorough evaluation to give you a realistic expectation of where you are compared to where you want to be is what you need. You need someone who's going to be honest with you. And, I'll say that a lot of people come in and it's much better than they thought. Or it is like, not only better than they thought, in terms of, you can retire, but, you can retire with a lot more income than you thought, or you can retire earlier than you thought, right?
Yeah.
If we do these things, here's what can happen, right? It's hardly ever as bad as you think. And there's always some way out of it. And if you're carrying debt right now, someone can help you create a plan that says, here's how we methodically reduce that debt, right? Even if it's a 7-year plan. If I could say, if you do these things every month, here is when all of that will be gone. That feels much different than randomly throwing money at your debt and hoping that one day it's going to be gone. That feels endless.
Yeah.
Everything from a finance standpoint, it needs a plan, right? It needs a plan, and you need to know what are the steps I need to take. And I feel like I got off topic about people being feeling hopeless about retirement, right? I think when I hear that, immediately what I think is people just need to know.
Yeah, I was going to say, so much of it I think is self-inflicted or self-decided, for lack of a better term. It's people.
Yeah, I'm trying not to say that because I don't want to put the blame on them, right?
No, fair.
Yeah. That's that's not one. But yes, like a lot of things are self-inflicted, right? Like I am X amount of pounds overweight because of things that I do to myself, right?
Yep.
But I do know if I went to someone and said, I need to start exercising again, I need to lose some weight, I know that my diet could be better, they would say, here's the steps we need to take. And my results would be much different than if I just kept going, I don't know, right? Like eating good one day and then binging on everything that's in the pantry the next day. Everything comes down to, do you have a plan? Or, can you eliminate as many unknowns as possible and make them knowns so that way you know how you need to move forward? Right?
Exactly.
I feel like I'm not as upbeat based on what you're saying. So I really want to change my tone. I really want to tell people, like, if you can just face the reality of whatever the present situation is, there will be some sort of option you can take.
Yeah.
And again, worst case scenario is it's as bad as you're already thinking. What's there to lose?
Yeah.
Right?
More than anything, it's creating room to deal with those unknowns. Like the plan, take the, just rip the Band-Aid off, deal with the short-term pain, frustration, shame, whatever's associated with it. Take that over a lifetime of
worry and because
decision.
Unknown is scarier than bad news, right?
Yeah.
You've probably heard me use this analogy before when I say, when you go into your bedroom at night, before you flip the light switch on, it's always a little bit scary because you have no idea what's in the room. Likelihood is there's not an axe murderer standing across the room, right? But when you can't see anything, everything is possible.
Everything's an axe murderer.
Yeah. You have to flip the light switch on to see what you're dealing with, right? Even if there turns out the axe murderer is there, at least now you know that he's there. Or she, he or she is there. And you can start developing a very quick plan of action, right? Of what you're going to do next. You need to flip the light switch on and quit feeling like you're never going to be able to retire, because feeling isn't known.
Yeah.
You need to know. You need to know if you can retire, and you need to know what that retirement's going to look like. And I'm going to tell you this, you're going to retire at some point. You will not be able to work forever unless you pass away earlier than the average life expectancy. The likelihood is you will not be able to work until you pass away, unless you pass away early. And so retirement is coming, whether you think you can handle it or not. And it's up to you to determine what that retirement looks like. And the longer you delay coming to the reality of what you can do or what reality looks like right now, the less options you're going to have. And the less options you're going to have, the less choice you're going to have in terms of that retirement being dictated by you and you having control of what that retirement looks like. So I don't know who's listening to this right now that has to hear it, but whatever you've got to do to get past your fear of, I don't want to know how bad it is, you've got to get past it and deal with whatever the situation is. All right. I think that's good enough.
That was well said.
I don't know what else to say about it besides everything is education.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly it. I think that is the takeaway from these statistics is the vast majority of these people, I have no doubt, it's a lack of understanding or a fear of knowing what the situation really is. But worst case scenario, it's as bad as you think, and you only have up to go from there.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Another fantastic day. Solid gold advice.
Dang.
All right, everybody. We appreciate you listening in. We'll talk to you again soon.
Bye, guys.